Hello, and thank you for joining this session. My name is Evan Crane. I'm a PhD candidate in Kevin Murphy's Sustainable Seed Systems Lab at Washington State University. I'll also be the facilitator for this session, which will focus on breeding, malting, and brewing for Northwest flavor. During this session, we'll first look through the lens of academia and research as I highlight some of the research I've been fortunate to be a part of. Then we'll shift to the industry perspective and learn about an exciting collaboration with Elwha River Spelt, a Hollis winter spelt variety bred by Kevin Murphy for dryland, organic conditions, and released as an open source seed initiative pledge variety in 2014. With the time that I have with you now, I'll talk about a project in detail that was part of a larger study led by Stephen Bramwell, Thurston County Extension Director in Southwest Washington. The study utilized a breeder, farmer, craft brewer, maltster, food science, extension, and consumer collaboration with a long-term goal to cultivate high-value markets for grain based on the distinctive qualities and suitability to a value-based supply chain. And before I go on, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge all of the people that made this research possible. Our funding sources, Olympia Thurston Conservation District, our collaborators, the farmers, the Malt House, Brewery, and Tumwater Artesian Brew Fest. So now I'll get into the study. If you want to learn more and really dive in, just go ahead and scan this QR code. It'll take you to the whole report prepared by Stephen Bramwell along with our collaborators. In the Northwest, there are unique opportunities to create value-based supply chains around cereal grains. There is the potential to produce high-quality grain. There's grains transport infrastructure. There are craft and commodity malt houses, craft brewers, and affluent markets interested in provenance, craft, and understanding the story behind a product. This study endeavored to realize this potential. And one role of land-grant university researchers is to take on some of the risk associated with trying to figure out how to create a value-based supply chain, engage stakeholders to determine the right questions to ask, conduct the research needed to answer these questions, and then translate the work so that it can have an impact in regional economies and communities. And remember, the study wanted to look at distinctive qualities of barley varieties, which may be masked when varieties are aggregated through the commodity system. But just because something is different does not necessarily mean that it's better. What I'm getting at here is that differentiation can be a viable strategy, especially with the decommodification of grains to add value. And what I'll argue is that validation of these differences, which can come in many different forms, strengthens that differentiation strategy to add value. And what we can do as researchers is engage in evaluation that can provide objective validation and present the evidence that may be required to build confidence in saying that different is in fact better. So let me show you what this project looked like. Again, this project used a breeder, farmer, maltster brewer, food science consumer extension collaboration. It's not just a transfer of material, but functional linkages exist to exchange information and insight and provide an opportunity for innovation. And farmers want varieties that perform well in their fields and that have distinctive qualities attractive to high-value markets. Maltsters want high-quality, uniform grain to produce sought-after malt for brewers and distillers who want high-performing malt with unique and distinctive flavor. And beers must meet consumer demands and preferences, which are fracturing, differentiating throughout the market. So breeders, food scientists, and extension agents must work together to balance these needs to support variety development for regional grain economies. And now I'll walk you through this study, which actually occurred over 2 years in 2017 and 2018. In the first year, there were several breeding lines and the control variety grown in the field and a limited amount of seed was available for sensory evaluation with malt, beer, and distilling. And then most of the grain went to the next year, which is the study I'll talk about now. During that year, there were 3 breeding lines and a control variety that were grown out in half-acre plots in triplicate, with the goal of producing 4,000 pounds per variety that could be malted on a commercial scale by Gold Rush Malting in Oregon. That malt would then be available for brewers to brew beers with the malt. They could purchase the malt and brew beers, and then we also could use the malt in the study that I'll talk about. And that study was done at the Tumwater Artesian Brew Fest. So not only was it a sensory study, but it was also an excellent education and outreach opportunity. And we had consumers taste the 4 different beers, which were brewed by Top Rung Brewing, where the only difference was the barley variety used. The recipe was the same otherwise. We had them rank the beers, provide a description in their own words, and then using a beer flavor map, select attributes that they thought best described the beer they were tasting. Okay, so just some results really quickly. I'm going to show on the y-axis here our rank. So we have the median as the bar and mean as the plus sign. And here's our control variety. Its median is actually 3. So we see that 2 of the breeding lines did better than the control, but this difference wasn't significant in terms of their median or mean ranks. We do have one comparison where we saw a significant difference. This is between the breeding line 117.17 and 120.17. It's represented here by this significance value. So then why did we perhaps see a lower rank for 117.17? And that's where we can look at the flavor map data, the description data from the consumers, and then a pooled data set with all of their responses combined. And we see that that breeding line in particular had certain attributes that were present in a higher frequency than the other genotypes. And that may have been a reason why it was set apart. So things like woody, sour, and dairy, not particularly attractive or distinctive qualities that would make it better. I mean, distinctive nonetheless. So through this, we were able to show that consumers can differentiate, and we can provide objective validation for these differences. And then we can take that information and send it back down the supply chain to the brewers, to the maltsters and the breeders. And there's an interesting story there with this 117.17 that we can discuss in the Q&A if anyone's interested. So a big question is there a premium that consumers will pay that will support the development of regional grain economies that rely on these distinctive qualities coming from the locally grown grain? And we asked how important what local ingredients were. And about a quarter said that they're kind of in the middle. They don't agree or disagree. And then we asked also if they would pay more for a beer, if they knew that it supported local farmers. We found significant differences with these 3 categories here. These agree very much, moderately agree, and extremely agree than all the other responses. So there's an overwhelming majority of people who participate in this study that say, yes, I would pay more for a beer if I knew that it would support local farmers. So we can also go back down the supply chain with this information. And just quickly, some impact here. And again, if you want to check out the full report for the study, you can scan the QR code here. These are some of the additional funds that were leveraged, and then some of the outreach and education that went on, and also information on the data that we can give to growers, to the maltster, to brewers and distillers who are interested in these varieties. And with that, I'd like to thank you for your attention. And we'll turn things over now to the industry side and that perspective on developing a really exciting collaboration around Elwha River Spell. Thank you.